476 AD. The gates of the imperial palace open for the final time. A boy, barely 15 years old, stands frozen in silence, dressed in imperial purple, watching as a hardened barbarian general walks toward him with slow, unstoppable steps. That boy is Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire. In just a few moments, he will lose everything. No glorious final battle. No heroic last stand. No army willing to die for its emperor. Just silence. The greatest empire the world had ever seen, ending not with thunder, but with surrender. But here's the real question. How does a civilization powerful enough to rule 3 continents simply collapse? How does an empire that built roads across the world, commanded unstoppable armies, and shaped human civilization fall apart like dust in the wind? Because Rome did not die in a single day. Rome died slowly. It died through corruption, through greed, through political chaos, through leaders who cared more about power than survival. And most terrifying of all, Rome was not destroyed from the outside. It collapsed from within. To understand the end of Rome, we must go back to a time when it seemed impossible for Rome to ever fall. Imagine yourself walking through the streets of Rome during the height of its glory. Massive temples rise into the sky. Markets overflow with merchants from every corner of the known world. The Colosseum stands proudly at the center of civilization, while thousands gather to witness spectacles beyond imagination. From Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria, the world belongs to Rome. Its armies are feared. Its language defines power. Its laws shape civilization. To be Roman was to belong to the most powerful society on earth. So what went wrong? Everything. Behind the beauty, Rome was already beginning to rot. Its enemies were growing stronger. Its politics more corrupt. Its leaders weaker. And invisible cracks were forming beneath the surface, cracks that would eventually destroy an empire that once believed itself eternal. The fall of Rome was not an accident. It was a warning. At first, no one noticed the danger. Rome still looked powerful. Its cities were crowded. Its armies still marched beneath golden banners. Emperors still ruled from magnificent palaces. But beneath the surface, the empire was beginning to break. The real crisis started long before barbarian armies ever reached Roman borders. In 180 AD, Rome lost one of its greatest rulers, Emperor Marcus Aurelius. A philosopher king, respected by soldiers and feared by enemies. After his death, something changed. His son, Commodus, inherited the empire, and everything began to fall apart. Unlike his father, Commodus cared little for leadership. He preferred luxury, entertainment, and personal glory. He even fought in gladiator arenas, believing himself to be a living god. Rome had once been ruled by discipline. Now, it was ruled by ego. And when Commodus was assassinated in 192 AD, chaos exploded. Suddenly, the throne of Rome was no longer earned through leadership. It was bought with violence. Generals turned against emperors. Soldiers murdered rulers for money. Civil wars spread across the empire like disease. Over the next decades, Rome entered what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century, a nightmare that nearly destroyed the empire forever. Between 235 and 284 AD, more than 50 men claimed to be emperor. Some ruled for years. Some ruled for months. Many were murdered by their own soldiers. Imagine living in a civilization where rulers disappear overnight, where loyalty means nothing, where armies fight each other instead of protecting the empire. Rome was no longer united. It was tearing itself apart. But politics were only part of the disaster. The economy was collapsing too. Rome had become too large, too expensive, too difficult to control. Its borders stretched thousands of miles, defended by massive armies that demanded endless payment. But the empire was running out of wealth. Gold and silver mines were drying up. Trade slowed down. Taxes increased. And desperate emperors made a fatal mistake. To pay their soldiers, they began weakening Roman currency. Coins that once contained nearly pure silver became almost worthless. Prices exploded. Food became expensive. Cities grew poorer. And ordinary citizens slowly stopped believing in the empire that once promised greatness. Meanwhile, Rome's enemies were changing. To the north, Germanic tribes were no longer small scattered groups. They had grown stronger, smarter, deadlier. The Goths, the Vandals, the Franks. Names that would soon terrify the Roman world. And in the east, another powerful enemy was rising, the Persian Empire. Then, something happened that shattered Rome's image forever. In 260 AD, Emperor Valerian was captured alive by the Persians. For the first time in Roman history, an emperor had become a prisoner. The ruler of Rome, the man Romans saw almost like a living god, humiliated before the world. According to ancient stories, the Persian king even used him as a human footstool. Whether fully true or not, the damage was done. The myth of Roman invincibility had been broken. And once an empire stops believing it cannot lose, its fall becomes only a matter of time. The late 3rd century, Rome faced a terrifying truth. The empire had become too massive for one man to control. Its borders stretched across continents. Enemies attacked from every direction. Rebellions erupted constantly. And emperors barely survived long enough to fix anything. Then came a man who believed he had the solution. His name was Diocletian. Born into a humble family, he rose through the army and became emperor in 284 AD. Unlike many rulers before him, Diocletian understood something dangerous. Rome was too big to survive as one empire. So he made a decision that would change history forever. He divided Rome, east and west. 2 emperors. 2 governments. 2 centers of power. At first, the plan worked. The empire stabilized. Borders became easier to defend. Order slowly returned. But there was a hidden cost. Rome had planted the seed of its own separation. Over time, the two have stopped feeling like one civilization. The Western Roman Empire weakened. The Eastern Roman Empire, with its rich capital, Constantinople, grew stronger than ever. While Rome struggled, Constantinople flourished. Its markets overflowed with wealth. Its defenses were stronger. Its economy survived. The West slowly grew poorer. The East grew richer. And that division became impossible to ignore. But Rome's greatest danger was not separation. It was something far more dangerous: dependence. By now, Rome had a serious problem. Fewer Roman citizens wanted to fight. Years of war, corruption, and instability had broken the spirit of the empire. So Rome turned to outsiders. Germanic warriors. Barbarian mercenaries. Men once considered enemies were now hired to defend the empire. At first, it seemed smart. Why lose Roman lives when foreign soldiers could fight for gold? But Rome failed to understand one terrifying truth. Mercenaries fight for payment, not loyalty. Roman legions, once filled with proud citizens willing to die for their empire, were now packed with men who had little emotional connection to Rome. And slowly, Rome stopped defending itself. It outsourced survival. Even worse, many of Rome's most powerful generals were no longer Roman. Some were Goths. Some were Vandals. Some were Germanic commanders with their own ambitions. Think about that for a second. The greatest empire in history had become dependent on the very people it once conquered. Then came the disaster that changed everything. From the endless grasslands of Central Asia arrived a terrifying force, the Huns. Led by the feared Attila, they moved like a storm, fast, brutal, unstoppable. Entire tribes fled before them. And terrified Germanic peoples rushed toward Roman borders, begging for protection. Rome had a choice: reject them, or let them inside. Rome chose to open the gates. And without realizing it, the empire invited chaos into its own house. At first, Rome believed it could control the newcomers. The Gothic tribes crossing into Roman territory were supposed to become allies, soldiers who would fight for the empire in exchange for land and protection. But Rome made a fatal mistake. Instead of helping them, corrupt Roman officials abused them. Food was stolen. Families starved. Promises were broken. Desperate and furious, the Goths rebelled. Then came the moment that changed everything. 378 AD, the Battle of Adrianople. A Roman emperor marched confidently into battle, believing Rome's armies would crush the rebellion as they had done for centuries. He was wrong. The Roman army was annihilated. Thousands of soldiers were slaughtered. And Emperor Valens himself disappeared on the battlefield, his body never found. For the first time in centuries, Rome looked vulnerable. Its legendary armies no longer seemed unstoppable. Its enemies had learned something dangerous. Rome could bleed. After Adrianople, fear spread across the empire. And things only got worse. In 410 AD, a Gothic king named Alaric marched toward the impossible target, Rome itself. For 800 years, the Eternal City had stood untouched by foreign enemies. Rome was not supposed to fall. People believed the city was protected by destiny. But destiny could no longer save a dying empire. After years of broken promises and political games, Alaric had enough. His warriors entered Rome. For 3 terrifying days, the city was looted. Homes burned. Treasures disappeared. Citizens fled in panic. The city that once conquered the world had been conquered. The psychological shock was enormous. Across the empire, people could hardly believe what had happened. If Rome could fall, then nothing was eternal. And yet, even after all this, Rome still survived. Broken. Humiliated. But alive. For decades, the empire staggered forward like a wounded giant refusing to collapse. Then came another nightmare. Attila the Hun. A man so feared that entire cities surrendered without a fight. His armies swept across Europe like destruction itself. Villages vanished. Kingdoms trembled. Even Rome feared his name. For a moment, it looked like Attila would destroy what remained of the empire forever. But in 451 AD, Roman forces managed one final miracle. At the Battle of the Catalaunian Plains, Roman generals joined forces with barbarian allies and stopped Attila's advance. It was one of Rome's last great victories. But there was a tragic truth hidden inside that victory. Rome had not saved itself. Barbarians had saved Rome. The empire could no longer survive without outsiders. And once a civilization loses the ability to defend itself, its ending becomes inevitable. Rome was no longer collapsing slowly. Now, it was running out of time, and then the end finally arrived. 476 AD. No massive war. No final army standing proudly at the gates. No emperor leading one last heroic defense. Just silence. Inside the imperial palace stood a frightened teenager named Romulus Augustulus, the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire. He was only a boy. Too young to save an empire already collapsing beneath its own weight. Marching toward him was a Germanic commander named Odoacer. A man who had spent years serving inside Rome's own military system. That's the tragic irony of Rome's ending. It was not destroyed by strangers. It collapsed through the very people it had allowed into its power structure. Without resistance, Odoacer removed Romulus from the throne. The imperial crown disappeared. The symbols of Roman power were sent away. And just like that, the Western Roman Empire officially ended. Not with glory. Not with greatness. But with exhaustion. An empire that once ruled the known world simply stopped existing. But here's the truth history rarely tells you. Rome never completely died. While the West collapsed, the Eastern Roman Empire, later known as the Byzantine Empire, survived for nearly another 1,000 years. Its emperors still called themselves Romans. Its laws preserved Roman traditions. Its capital, Constantinople, carried the empire's legacy long after Rome itself had faded. And even in the West, Rome never truly disappeared. Its language evolved into Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian. Its laws shaped modern governments. Its architecture inspired civilizations for centuries. Even today, every road, parliament, legal system, An empire carries shadows of Rome. So why did Rome really fall? Was it barbarian invasions? Political corruption? Economic collapse? Weak emperors? Civil wars? The answer is terrifying. It was all of them. Rome did not collapse because of one disaster. It collapsed because problem after problem slowly poisoned the empire from within. The economy failed. Leaders became corrupt. Citizens lost trust. Armies stopped fighting for ideals. And eventually, Rome stopped believing in itself. That may be the most important lesson of all. Because civilizations rarely collapse the moment enemies attack. They collapse the moment people stop caring enough to protect them. And maybe that's why the story of Rome still matters today. Because the greatest empire in history did not fall in a single battle. It fell through silence. Through weakness. Through division. But even after its collapse, Rome never truly vanished. Because every time we speak a language shaped by Latin, every time governments follow systems inspired by Roman law, every time we look at great cities, roads, monuments, and ideas, Rome still lives. The empire died. But the civilization survived. Fire,